Hi, everyone. We're going to have another campfire conversation tonight. And tonight, the campfire conversation is on calling. And I'm joined by Gary Barkalow and John Hard. And what we want to do tonight is talk about the significance or the importance of calling and then make some distinctions. Gary, in your book, you say we underestimate the weightiness of our calling. Do you mind just elaborating on that a little bit? We underestimate the weightiness of our calling.
Yeah, the thought of that is I think we often think, I can do something for Christ. I can help people somewhat, but not like others can. My life is not that consequential. Yeah, I may touch something, but I think we just underestimate the power of our life, the power of our words, the power of our presence, the power of whatever God has given us, a unique way to see, to perceive, to understand, to speak, to do. And we just see other people as having a far more significant, weighty, valuable, helpful life. I mean, one of the things I say in there too is that, there's only one person that underestimates the power of our life, and it's not God, because He has created us. He has set us free. He has given us something uniquely to bring to the world. He's training us. And it's not Satan, and we'll get into that in a few weeks, the battle against our calling. It's not the kingdom of darkness, because that's why they wage war against us and the power of our life. They understand the power of the life of Christ in us. We are the ones that underestimate the power, the weightiness, the value, the beauty of our lives.
So why do you think we underestimate it? I mean, look, I believe this. I believe that I'm a sinner saved by grace. I really do. And I believe that in some ways I don't believe it enough. I mean, I think there's a bit of humility in there that God still needs to grow. But there's also a way I can use that same sentence, I'm just a sinner saved by grace, that I don't know. Tell me, what's a good way to do it and what's a wrong way to do that?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons why we underestimate the power of our life, or we diminish the power, the very life of Christ in us. I think one is that we fail to realize the battle that comes against us in the world and with the flesh and with Satan, with his activity in our life and around the world. And Sam, as you often talk about, the greatest tool that Satan uses is the power of a lie. It's not so much that he manipulates situations and circumstances as much as he reinterprets what happens to us. And we tend to hear something like, you see, no one's listening. You see, no one cares what you think. And sometimes that just comes through a look that we perceived that was given to us by another person, and all that plays in, and we think, oh, see, I have no place, no one wants to hear from me, and so on. That's one. I think the other is that we start to equate the power of our life, the weightiness of our life, the value of our life, and what God has given us by job titles, by authority given to us, by a job, a church, a Christian organization, something, or by recognition of the world. And as soon as we try to define our calling by a job, a title, a position, we are really vulnerable to the message of the world saying, you're nobody and you have nothing to offer, see? And let alone, the third thing I would say is the fact that we know our own life, and we know the person that we have not yet become. We can be very disappointed in our growth, in our maturity, our skills. And so that diminishes our understanding of the weight of our life. So we have all that working, in a sense, against us in this world.
I love the way you say calling is not just a job title, because if it's a job title, I may not have that job title. So who am I? Am I just the scum of the earth? Or I felt years ago, I had the job title. I was the owner of a software company. And I felt like God told me to get rid of it all and do what? what was I? I mean, even now I'm director of Beliefs of the Heart, which like has no employees. So, so what value is that job title? I'm not even an employee of it. Um, so job titles are treacherous because either we don't have them or we have them a little bit and then we can lose them. I felt like God called me to lose my job title. So did he call me to lose my calling?
Right, right. And as soon as we start to equate our calling with a job or a position or some sort of recognition or title, first of all, we are completely vulnerable now to the world, right? If I feel like I should be doing something and I look at an organization and think they should be hiring me to do such and such, well, I have no control if they're going to hire me or not, or what they think of me or anything else. And our calling is never based on the mood or the decision of someone else. It just isn't. That's why we said in the last several of these, and we'll continue to say, that our calling is who we are. It's something that God has created in us, at our birth. And then he set us free as we came to know Christ and enter into the kingdom of God. He's setting us more free to purely bring that to the world. Again, this particular way that we see or we perceive, that we can see what's going on and speak into it, into a person's life or a situation or a circumstance or an organization or whatever that is, or a particular skill that we have. It really is in us. I mean, that's why in this chapter, in chapter 4 of It's Your Call, at the end, I talk about the life of Joseph. Joseph has this dream about how he's going to rule over in a situation, didn't quite understand what it meant, but he was going to rule over. And if you look at this, if you look at the journey, and it looks like he totally missed his calling. I mean, all of a sudden, he has become a slave and therefore a master in a man's house. So he's not ruling over anything. He's being ruled over. And yet at some point, the master, and he was the captain of the guard, says, Joseph, I see how good you are at what you do, so I'm going to put you in charge of everything in my home. And then he's thrown into prison. And again, he's in captivity. But there, the warden sees who he is, this thing that's in him, and says, I want you to rule over, this prison. And then eventually he meets Pharaoh, and he tells Pharaoh, there's a famine coming. This is what you need to do to save your people. And Pharaoh says, oh my goodness, I've never met anyone with the discernment you have. You hear from God. And he says, I want you to rule over everything. Well, many people look at that and say he didn't actually walk in his calling until he was over the kingdom. Well, the fact is that Joseph was just being who he was in every one of those settings. He was letting them experience the weightiness, the gifting, if you will, of his life. And people recognizing that and saying, Joseph, rule over my household. Joseph, rule over the prison. Joseph, rule over the kingdom. He was walking in who he was that whole time, regardless of title.
So you're saying there's something innate. Now, I want to switch gears a minute. And, I hate to tee it up for you, Gary, so I'm going to tee it up for you, even though I hate to do it. It's just too easy for you. But I would say one of the teachings you gave on the retreat, and you explained it in the book some, but I think in the retreat you give a greater depth to it, is you explain the difference between calling and two other things. And I really do learn sometimes more from learning things that something isn't. It helps me understand what something is. So you know where I'm going. You have a section in your book called Calling, Roles, and Assignments. And can you explain to us what calling isn't by contrasting it with a couple other things? You muted yourself.
I'm going to give you guys fair warning that Sam and John, at one point, I'm going to ask you to tell some stories on yourself. So just be ready. So yes, I think contrasts are really important for understanding something. And so I kind of gave you a contrast already, that calling is not necessarily a job, a position, a title, that those are just ways simply to present your calling, the effect of your life. But yeah, this idea of calling, roles, and assignments, many times, again, people will equate their calling with the job. A pastor has a job as the pastor, as the teacher, the lead teacher, preacher, and so on. And they'd say, well, that's a calling. And I would say, no, being a pastor is not a calling. It is a job in which you bring your calling. And if the effect of your life is to teach, it's to bring clarity to something, to bring encouragement, to bring understanding, then you're bringing that effect to this position called pastor or teacher. And whatever it is, whatever that is. So the contrast is that your calling is not a job position or title. It is the effect of your life. And so
just a minute, Gary, just a minute. I got to interrupt you. I know so many people who say my calling is to be a teacher. Isn't that just a job title? I mean, that's what I hear you saying.
It really is a job title, because we do have a job called teacher or teaching. And when someone says that to me, typically what I'll say is, if they say my calling is to be a teacher, I'll ask them, say that again and don't use the word teacher. That's the reaction I get right there. Sometimes it's not laughing, it's not kind. But what I'm trying to do is to get them to get rid of a title, a job position, and tell me, what is the effect? And so they may go, I love for people to understand something so they can live it out. And then I'm thinking, okay, now we're getting to the effect of your life, this thing that God has created you to do. And they might use other words instead of teaching, like to bring clarity, understanding, wisdom, practicality, belief, all of these things. Those are all words of effect versus a title like teacher. And so it really is important that we find that, because again, the effect of your life is not granted by another person, nor is it taken away. You just bring it wherever you are. So it is really important to understand that.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt you. So it's not a role. It's not a role like a teacher or a pastor or a worship leader or a computer programmer. So teaching, calling is not a role. What else isn't it?
Well, nor is it the role of being a father or a mother or an employee or an employer or a son and daughter. Those are really all roles.
Yeah.
And John and Sam, we often hear people say, well, my calling is to be a father if it's a man, or to be a mother if a woman would say that. And I do want to say very clearly that we greatly affect other people's lives and the world around us as we walk well into our role as a father or a mother, a husband, a wife, a good employee or employer, in friendship and all these things. But as powerful as those are and as needed as they are, those are roles in our life. And in fact, I have the role of a father because I have children. I have the role of a husband because I'm married. And so those are simply roles. Those are not callings. Those are roles that we have acquired because of choices that we have made. And again, I hear people go, well, my calling is to be a father. And again, often they're elevating the role of being a father or a mother, whatever that is, by saying that. But sometimes people are hiding behind their role from their calling, often because they don't know what it is. And so they go to the only thing they know and say, well, this is my calling. And I would say, no, again, it's not your calling, it's your role. Every person has a God-given effect of their life. And just as we've been referring to this, and they are to bring that calling into being a father or into a mother or into being an employee or an employer, and on it goes into our roles. But they are very different things. And the truth is that God cares deeply about both of those things. He speaks to both of those things. And he would not give us both, and if you will, hold us accountable to those things, but put them in opposition to one another. They are not in opposition. And so we'll go more in depth, but we talked about calling, roles, and assignments. You see, God will give us a place that we can bring the effect of our life, the glory of our life, the weightiness of our life. He'll bring us to a place. Sometimes it's a job. Sometimes it's a ministry position. It's a volunteer position. Sometimes it's just a community position, a circle of influence. And he'll bring us to that assignment because he wants us to bring the weightiness, the effect of our life to those people and to that thing. But he will also use that to help us fulfill our role as a father, a mother, a spouse, and so on. So does that help, John?
Well, so just list half a dozen roles, just off the top of your head, like teacher.
Okay. Speaking in Christian terms that we think, teacher, counselor, pastor. We could go into a CPA in a firm, a manager, a leadership position.
Okay, that's good. So let's say that you love to teach. Tell me some assignments someone who loves to teach might have.
Okay, so if I take teaching away for a second, that title, and I just use the idea of bringing clarity and understanding to something. Someone could obviously be in a teaching position, Sunday school teacher, pastor, teacher in a school, and that's what they're getting paid to do. But you could also bring that in. Let's say you're a manager, and so you're not just holding people accountable to their tasks, but you're actually teaching. You're helping them understand, this is what I'm hiring, you've been paid to do. This is how you do it. This is why you're having difficulty here. This is how we make things better. You're just teaching. It's something you do. You're helping people understand what is going on or what they're doing to bring clarity to that so they can understand and walk it out. So we bring that in everything we do, including with our own children and our friends. Does that help?
Yeah, oh, it really does. And so, example from my own life is my grandfather, my father, and my brother were all pastors. So that's a title, right? And if they said my calling is to be a pastor, if somebody outside of them looked at them, and I got to see all of them. I got to see my grandfather, I got to see my father, I got to see my brother Andy, quote, as pastors. And yet each one of them were so different that if you took away the term pastor, and if you took away the building church, but you saw what they did day to day, it was like three completely different people, because I think they had three completely different callings. So my grandfather was very orderly. He brought structure. He ran meetings where he got churches just to agree, and they worked together, and they worked, arm in arm, side by side, cheek to cheek, jowl to jowl, moving forward. My dad was really good at speaking and bringing life to people through the word. My brother Andy just loves people. I mean, it's just amazing how he loves people, but they're all given the title preacher or pastor. But the reality is their calling was the way they brought their calling into that title or into that role or into that assignment. But if you took away the word pastor, and if you took away the word church, and you just looked at what they did, it would be like three completely different people. And I think it's three completely different people because why, Gary?
Well, because they have three different callings, the effect of their life is different.
Exactly.
Yeah. John, what are your thoughts?
Well, this whole idea or teaching of the calling, assignments, and roles has been one of the most clarifying things for me. And I've heard a lot of people comment that's one of those clarifying things for them as well, as they've come to the retreats we do. For me, I struggled for so long trying to figure out what my calling was. And as I began to understand that my calling, the thing that I'm compelled to do the most, is to help navigate the journey with other people, the journey of walking with Christ. I love to shepherd people. I love to be sort of a trail guide and come alongside other people and find out their story, find out where they've been, where they're headed. And so I love to say that my calling is to help navigate the journey. But I do that in a whole lot of different situations. I do that through the Noble Heart, but I also do that through my office as a CPA. I've got clients. I help them navigate the journey of running their business, but I also help them navigate the journey of, just living their life and their walk with Christ. I have the assignment and the role of being a father and a husband. So One of the things I just love to do with my family is help them navigate the journey. I love it when my sons have come to me and they're in a dating relationship and they're trying to figure out how to proceed. And we talk, in depth about it. I just love to help them navigate that journey of dating the girl. So those are different assignments and roles I have, but the calling is the same in every single one.
And John, I love the fact that I don't know if it's a title. I don't know how you would describe us, but in a sense, one of the title that goes with a CPA is a trusted advisor. I remember when I first heard that phrase for you as a CPA, I thought that's who you are. You're a trusted advisor. You're the one that helps people navigate their journey. It just fits you very well. It's what you do in work. It's what you do in about any setting you're in. So let me throw out some thoughts here, and then I'd love for you guys to do that as well. Some final kind of wrap up.
These are going to be closing thoughts. So let's give your closing thoughts, Gary, as we wrap this up.
Okay. So let me say this. It's so vitally important that we understand that biblically our calling is to bring this God-given effect that he has put in us to have on other people, to the world around us, to the world that we have a touch on, an influence with. And so we have to identify, what is that? What is it that I can uniquely see or hear or pick up or understand or do? And not only can I uniquely see it, but I love that. I love when I get to see something and I know it will help others. And so it's really important we identify what that is, first of all. Secondly, that we do understand it's not the same as our roles, because most of us do not get to be in a role. Let me say it this way. Most of us do not get to have an assignment that pays us to fulfill our role as a provider that 100% encapsulates the effect of our life. It's just as you were describing, John, with your life. So it's very important we understand this is the effect of my life. I'm going to bring it to every circle that my life touches. My work, if I have a full-time job, my church, my relationships, my community, everywhere my life goes, I'm going to be aware of my effect and how can I bring this to people to help them? And not to try to force your role to be your calling. Because what I see is either their assignment with their calling. Often what happens is people will go, this is what I love to do, so how can I make money from it so it will become my assignment, my job as well? And often when we are in the search of understanding, what does God put on my heart to bring to this world? And then we throw this model of making money from it, it changes everything. The real deep heart search turns off immediately because we're trying to figure out how can I make money from people as I offer this to them. And that is a deadly place to be with our calling. So keeping them separate is really important. And the last thing I would add to this idea is by understanding calling, roles, and assignments, we will understand that as God directs us to different things, we don't have to hold on to a job opportunity and say, well, I'm a teacher. That's not a teaching role. I wouldn't take that role, that job. When maybe God is saying, no, actually, I need you there to bring clarity and understanding to those people in that setting. Forget the title, just go and do what I made you to do there. So we are very free to go where God assigns us rather than looking at titles and going, well, that doesn't make sense. The other side that's very freeing of this is that, we're not concerned about, oh, I need to get in my career path. I need to be known as a teacher, an HR person, a manager, whatever those things are. We can let go of that and say, no, I'm just going to bring who I am to anywhere I go. And God will build that and focus as I go. We don't have to worry about controlling our career path. So, and again, something we said earlier, it's very hard for us to understand the effect of our life, the compelling of our life, all these words we've been using, the weightiness of our life. If we don't live an evaluated life, we really look carefully at our life and try to understand it. And if we don't have people that will speak into us to say, I think I see what God has made you to do or be, because again, we are too close for clarity to see it clearly.
So I'm going to bring this to a close, but I do want to thank you, Gary. And to everybody who's watching, I do want to say there's a life of value that God has for us. And I think that most of us underestimate it. Most of us don't understand what it is. You know, in the first chapter of Acts, the disciples go to Jesus and say, "Will you now do this?" And Jesus says, "No, you will. You will." That's us. Jesus is saying there's a mission for each one of us, a unique, special mission that I think goes beyond title, goes beyond our role, goes beyond our assignment, into something uniquely who we are. So I encourage you to join us next week. By the way, this is my high tech. I did it right the first time. As you can see that we are very technically proficient with it. It's your call. Does this look backwards to you?
No, it's right.
Oh, it looks backwards to me. Anyway,
You're backwards.
Call by Gary. If you want to get a copy, go to thenobleheart.com. Thenobleheart.com. It's a great book. I really recommend it. I didn't write it, and I strongly recommend it.